We did it! All right, let's see what we got here. Can I make you bigger? Nope. So we're gonna let you go like this. And
okay,
here,
hi guys.
Here's the nugget.
Hi. How are you? You having a good day? Good, good. So I am Kim, and we are teaching you about animals that live in the Chesapeake Bay today. And right now we're going to be starting on one side of our exhibit. Can you see behind me a little bit? You see some of the things painted on our walls? Good. Well, we like to start at the very beginning of where our Chesapeake Bay watershed starts. Have you learned about the word watershed?
No, we haven't talked about that yet. Sorry.
Okay, so basically the Chesapeake Bay isn't just about the bay itself. We have a whole bunch of water that goes into the bay that is fresh water from all the rivers that go into the bay and the streams that go into the rivers. And then on the other side of the bay, at the very mouth of the bay near Virginia Beach, is where we have actually the Chesapeake Bay going into the ocean. So we have ocean water and we have fresh water that mix together. So what is ocean water? Do you guys know? Is it fresh or salt? Salt. That's right. So in our Chesapeake Bay, we have both of those mixed together. And what that means is there's a lot of different animals that have had to learn how to adapt to live in a little bit of salt or a lot of salt or even just fresh water. So we're going to start on the freshwater side. And basically what we're going to start talking about are different animals and how they live in the different parts of our watershed. So if we're starting on freshwater, we're going to be talking about animals that live in the rivers and in the streams. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to pause with a picture that's not me, but you'll still hear me, you just won't see me. Do you see our picture?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a question while we're getting our camera focused on the animal we're going to learn about. And my first question is, what is an adaptation? What does that mean? Does anybody know?
I love how I see hands. Kira, can you tell us what an adaptation is? Could you hear that? They change what they're doing?
Yes, it has to do with their behavior. And actually, no, I couldn't hear her voice, but I could hear you talking. So you're probably going to have to repeat what their answers are. So, yep, they can change their behaviors to live and survive. And there's one other thing that doesn't really have to do with their behaviors. It has to do with their body itself. Can you think of another thing? I'll give you a hint. How about, can you see, let's see, can you see a deer when it's hiding in the woods, or is it really hard to see it?
Is it easy to see a deer hiding in the woods?
No. No, that's right. And that's because the deer has coloring on it to help it hide. We call that camouflage. So think about that. There's other things on their body that they can do to help them hide or protect themselves to survive in their environment. So we're going to turn the camera back on. And we see you. Do you see our fish tank? Yeah. Do you see an animal in that fish tank? Yeah. You do. Some of you do, and some of you. It's moving. Can you see it moving? What was that? Do you know what that is? Oh, I heard eel. Did some of you guess eel? Very good. Okay, so what I want you to do is observe what the eel is doing. Right now we're going to feed it, so you'll see something going down into the water, some tweezers. Whoop, it's grabbing the food. Can you see it trying to grab the food? Oh. How is it eating the food? Do you guys see that?
It is
Yeah. Oh. We dropped the food, but it didn't see it. There we go. So what do you notice that the animal can do when it's trying to get its food? Did it wait for the food to be put in its mouth, or did it attack the food? Yeah, so we call that an ambush predator. It hides, and then when it finds the food, it jumps out to eat it. And what kind of mouth do you think that eel has? Do you think it has teeth? It sure does. Did you see how it held on to that little piece of squid and it was trying to pull it out of the tweezers? Did you see that? Yeah. Right. Well, right now, is it easy or is it hard to see the eel? Okay, good job, you guys. It is kind of hard because it's hiding. And when it hides, it'll hide under rocks or logs. But another thing it can do is it actually can go all the way under the sand. So that's an adaptation that it has to be able to survive. Do you guys have any questions about the eel before we get ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll just take a couple because they could ask all day. What's your question? How do eels dig in the sand?
That's a good question. Do you think they use their tail or do you think they use their head? That's right. You saw how pointy their head was, and that's what they use. They wiggle down into the sand completely under it, and they use their nose like a shovel.
All right. All right. One more question. What's yours?
How do they breathe under the sand?
How do the eels breathe under the sand and in the water?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, they are a fish, and do you know what fish breathe with? Gills, that's right. They use gills to breathe. And when they're under the sand actually has little spaces where the water can go, so they can still breathe by pulling the water into their gills. So it's okay when they're under the sand. They're not going to be squished, or they're not going to be away from the oxygen in the water. They still have the ability to breathe under the sand, which is pretty cool. Okay, are you guys ready for our next animal? Yeah. Okay, do you see the picture on the screen? Doesn't that animal look prehistoric? Does it look like a dinosaur? Well, guess what? That animal has been around since the dinosaurs. It's called a long-nosed gar, and we're trying to chase it around the tank right now to find it for you. But once we do, we will turn on the camera and we'll give you a chance to observe it.
Yep, here he comes.
Here he goes. Do you see him swimming? Yeah. And what colors do you see on his body? Can you tell some of his colors? Yeah, that's right. He's got black and he's got dots. So he has a very different pattern than other fish, right? So we're going to try and give him some food. The tricky part is all the other fish want the food too. So let me tell you some of the other fish. So right now, we're trying to find the gar. And you notice where he is? Is he in the bottom of the tank or the top? Yeah, so that's actually an adaptation that they have. They live at the surface of the water, and what they do is they try, our perch are trying to steal his food. So sometimes our animals like to eat and sometimes they're not so hungry, and that's okay because these fish are cold-blooded. Do you guys know what that means? Wow, I hear some yeses and some nos. So maybe can
explanation.
You call it? Yeah,
you want to explain? Because I don't know that they're really sure.
Okay, so cold-blooded is not what we are. We have one temperature, and we need to stay that temperature to be healthy, right? And then if you are cold-blooded, your body temperature will go up with the temperature outside or down with the temperature outside of your body. And right now, is it really hot like summer? No, it's not hot like summer. It's cold. And sometimes when they get cold, they're not as hungry. So we're trying to get him to eat some food for you, but he may not do it. So, but you're still getting to actually observe some of his traits on his body. So he did it. He grabbed it, but he didn't quite want to eat it. Did you see how he did that? Were you able to see that? Yeah. If you watched carefully, he does it really fast, but basically he bites sideways. And you know what they do when they're hunting for animals that are alive? They'll pretend to be a log. Are you really good at acting like a log when you're swimming? No. So they actually will pretend to be a log and sit super still, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they'll swish their mouth sideways and grab a piece of food. So we're getting ready to go out of the Potomac River. That's where the gar is found. And we're going to get ready to move over and learn about some animals that actually live in the Chesapeake Bay.
Put your hands down. Yep, hands down. We're gonna listen. He's walking to the next tank.
Okay, so were there any questions they have about the gar before we move on to the next one?
Aiden, what's your question?
How long is the gar's mouth?
How long is the gar's mouth?
Ooh, that's a good question. It depends on how old they are. So they can live almost up to 20 years or so, and their mouths get bigger. And you know what? When they're full grown, they'll be too big to live in that tank. They can be 4 to 5 feet long, taller than you when they're full grown. And you know what? They have 2 layers of scales, so hardly anything can eat them because they're really, really tough to bite into. So that's another adaptation they have to protect themselves.
All right.
Alrighty, you guys ready for the animal from the Chesapeake Bay? All right. So this is our next animal. What do you see? Oh, that's good. Good job. So this is a horseshoe crab, and I'm going to actually get one out of the water. So you're getting to see what it looks like, and now you see this tank right here. You see my hand? So I'm going to be getting an animal out of the water. Can you see where the animal is yet? No? Some of you think you can? I'll give you a hint. There's something in the sand right here. Do you see that? Did you see that little line? That's its tail, and the rest of it is right here. So what is it doing? That's right, it's hiding in the sand. It can bury itself completely in the sand. So I'm going to pull it out of the water so you can see the different parts on its body. Now you see that tail? It looks really pointy and scary, right? Can you guys see that? That tail? Well, all it's trying to do is flip itself over. It actually doesn't hurt me at all. It doesn't have a point to it. It doesn't have any venom or anything that it could hurt me with. It maybe can just push against my arm. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you the underside, because this is actually the top part of the horseshoe crab. And what's crazy about the horseshoe crab is most of what it does happens underneath its shell on the bottom when it's crawling around in the sand. So are you ready for this? Look at that. Can you guys see right here? That's its mouth. And its mouth goes right to its stomach. So watch it move its legs. Do you see what it's doing? Good job. So you might notice that it has pinchers, right? And when it feels the food, it tries to grab it to hold on to the food. So it's got little pinchers right here that it's grabbing the food with. So the pinchers that it has aren't to hurt you at all. It's just to hold on to its food and walk around with. And right now it has its tail up because it's upside down and it's not used to eating that way. Usually it's the other way and it's face down. So what we're going to talk about with the adaptations has to do with all of its body parts, because do you know what? This guy has been around since before the dinosaurs. And it actually, some people record them as being 350 million years old. That's their species age, meaning that they've been on Earth that long. So how do you think a crazy looking creature like this could have survived for so long? What adaptations do you think it has?
But you know an adaptation for a horseshoe crab? Allie, what do you think? Okay, you forgot?
Shell.
Oh, it has a shell. Very good. It has an exoskeleton. That's a hard shell. And the hard shell keeps it protected. So you saw where its mouth was, right?
Okay, hold on. We just have to listen for just a second.
Gotcha.
Today is Wednesday, December 12th,
Good
and
enough.
no afternoon announcement. We hope you had a great day of learning. Please continue to prepare for dismissal.
Sorry to interrupt you. Would you continue, please?
Okay, so some of the adaptations that this animal has to do with how it survived for so long. So one actually is the hard exoskeleton, the hard shell on its body. And these guys actually are called crabs, but you know what? They're not really crabs. They actually have different body parts than a real crab. They have 10 eyes. How many eyes do you have? All right, so right here are 2 of its eyes. So let me take them out. I can show it to you. So right here are 2 of its eyes. Those are its 2 main eyes. You see that? Right there where my thumbs are? And those eyes are like insect eyes. They're called compound. And then they've got 3 eyes up front right there. There's 2 hiding underneath. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly where they are underneath. It's kind of hard to see them. They're really little. And then there's 2 right here. And then there's 1 on its tail. So that's 10 total. So true crabs actually only have 2 eyes, just like you and me, except they have them on eye stalks. These guys don't have eye stalks and they don't have 2 eyes. So they're not really a crab. You know what they're more closely related to? No, they're more closely related to spiders and scorpions. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So the other really cool adaptation that these guys have, you can't even see on its body. So we're going to get ready to move on to the next one. I'm going to finish telling you about the horseshoe crab, and we're going to go to our last animal. But the amazing adaptation of the horseshoe crab is that they actually have something in their blood that humans use to test medical devices and also to test vaccines. And it can tell us if there are any toxins in the vaccine before we go to sell it and use it. For instance, how many of you have ever had a vaccine before? Gotten a shot at the doctor's office?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We have horseshoe crabs to thank for the fact that those were safe shots to get. Can you believe that? Can you guys hear me?
We sure can. Yep.
Okay, good. Because now we're getting ready to move on to the last animal. And then with whatever time we have left, you can ask us questions, okay? So the last animal you see on your screen, what does that look like? There you go. You were able to read it. It's a northern sea robin. It's a kind of fish that lives at the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. And it likes to hang out on the bottom of the bay because it has the coolest adaptations. Are you ready? Do you see it? Do you see it swimming around? All right. Well, before we move anything, do you see those little, they look like little fingers that it's crawling around on the sand with. Do you see those tiny little sticks that it has coming out of its fins? Guess what? That's actually a fin that has adapted to turn into feet. So it uses those little look like finger-like appendages to crawl around and feel for food. Now, right now, my boss is getting out some food. Now, check out how he eats it. Do you see how fast he gets that food? And do you see his mouth? Yeah, that mouth. Sorry, we're trying to get him in focus a little bit more because he's up high. Oh, there's another little one down here, so we'll try and get that one. Did you see how fast he got that food? Now, here's what I think is kind of funny about these fish. They look a lot like Jar Jar Binks to me. Do you know who Jar Jar Binks is? He's from Star Wars, and he's got a really big mouth. That's kind of what these fish look like. And you see how big their fins are? Do you see how big the fins are, and they fan out from their head almost to their tail? Yeah, so that's another adaptation they have. One, they're super pretty to watch swim through the water, but they also can swim really fast. And when they go fast, they tuck those fans in. But when they're down looking for food, they spread them out to slow themselves down. So one adaptation they have are those little finger appendages to crawl around and feel for food on the bottom of the bay. And then the other thing they have are those big, huge fins to help them slow down when they're swimming super fast. And I will tell you this, actually a lot of fishermen don't like these sea robins because they're really good at stealing their bait. So they're kind of sneaky fish. And you see how the front of their head kind of looks like a shovel? Do you see that shape of the front of their head? And it sort of digs down. Well, that actually is to help them dig around in the sand to find their food. So they'll eat food that they can find anywhere. They really don't care what they're eating, okay? All right, so those are our 4 animals we were gonna share with you. One, the American eel. Oh, guess what? The crab came out to say hello. Do you see the crab? Yeah. Do you know what kind of crab that is? Oh, Liz is trying to get him focused for you. There we go. Do you see him? Yeah, that's a blue crab, and it's actually a male blue crab. So a little bonus animal today. These guys live where the sea robins live, and now the crab is running away and hiding. So what adaptation does a crab have? They can hide, right? But they also have really good pinchers. So we are ready for your questions. So you guys have any questions about the animals you met today from the river to the bay?
Well, I'm sure they do, but our bell is about to ring, so maybe we can schedule another session, and next time we can talk about more animals and stuff. But
oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
We would love that.
What do we say?
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, they